Hi, everybody. I have something I'd like to talk with you about today. I've been doing some reading recently in the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. Kind of a short book and a historical book that sometimes we kind of skip over, but has some really, really important life lessons in it for us. Just to set the scene, Nehemiah lived in an age when in the previous generation, the city of Jerusalem, the temple there, had been destroyed by enemies. The walls had been knocked down, and then the gates burned, and everything had been in a state of disrepair and rubble for a long, long time. The people had been carried away as captives or slaves in other places, and it all came about because of their sinfulness, and God had warned them if they didn't turn back to Him, that He would allow this to happen. But now, an entire generation has passed, and God moves Nehemiah to be the instrument to help restore the walls of Jerusalem and the people. Of course, he lived in occupied territory, so he had to have the permission of the king. It was risky to ask for that, but it was granted as God gave favor. The king also gave him letters of permission and even letters that allowed him to get building materials from the royal forests and so on. And so he traveled many, many, many miles back to Jerusalem. Upon arrival, he went around and looked over the situation and then met with the local residents and challenged them to come together from their disheartened position they'd been in and to work together to rebuild the walls. And so things began. Now, you have to understand what a huge project this was. This would be 4 city walls, 12 massive gates made of timbers that could be closed and barred to keep enemies out. And the total length of the wall was almost 2.5 miles. All the work had to be done by hand, but all of the people came together and they began to build, began to work. They were optimistic and cheerful about what was taking place. Well, when we get to Nehemiah chapter 4, where I'd like to focus tonight, the other people who lived in nearby nations heard what was going on, and they didn't like it one bit. One particular leader by the name of Sanballat gathered together other leaders and let them know he was not all happy about having a new fortified city in the area where they lived. And so they sent word, and they began to heckle and harass Nehemiah and the people and said, wow, are you rebelling against the king? Of course, they had the king's permission. They didn't know that. And then they began to deride and make fun of them and say, your wall, it's nothing. If a fox runs through there, it'll knock it down. Now, you guys aren't builders. What are you trying to do? But you know what? Nehemiah would not be distracted from the work that God had called him to do. We can learn a lot from that. I believe God's called all of us to do certain things in our lives. If you are a husband or wife, He's called you to be the best spouse you can be, to be loving and caring and show Christ-like love to the person you're married to. As a parent, we're called to build up the walls of our children so they'll grow up to be strong and obedient and know God and love Him and be people of character. In your workplace, you should be the best employee there is there because you do everything you do to the glory of God. Perhaps God has given you ministry. In fact, I believe we all have ministry. It may be small or large in other people's eyes, but it doesn't matter. God's called you to do something, to be productive, to accomplish in your life, just as He did Nehemiah. So when the critics speak up, and they will, when the opposition comes, and it will be there, don't get discouraged. Just stay on task. In fact, in Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 6, Nehemiah says, and so built we the wall, and all the wall was joined together unto the half thereof. That means they were half finished because the people had a mind to work. Listen, God's called you for accomplishment. The vision He's given you, the things He's called you to do, to be a part of, don't give up. Don't let other people's criticism hold you back. Make sure that you're on task, you're being obedient to Him, you obey His word, and you press on towards the mark. In fact, they reached the place of being halfway finished. And then, however, the people started to get a little discouraged. A few weeks went by, and they came to Nehemiah and said, I don't think we're going to be able to finish this job. There's just too much rubble. Rubble? Where'd that? Well, that's the old walls they'd been knocked down before. There was stone all over the place. Too much rubble. Was there more rubble than when they started? No, of course not. Nobody was trucking in rubble at night and dumping it there. Same amount of rubble there always was. You know what's happened? Halfway through, they started to get tired. They started to get discouraged. Another life lesson, stick it out. See it through. Keep pressing on. You're going to have days that are discouraging. You're going to have days where it seems like life has a lot of rubble, a lot of stuff in the way. But if God has given you a task, called you to do something that matters, keep pressing on so that you can accomplish what he's called you to. Finally, all the walls were completed. The city was restored, and it was a place where the people could live and know God's blessing once again as he had purposed for them. God wants your life to be a place where he can pour his blessing, where he can accomplish and live in harmony with you and you with him by you obeying him and seeking him. So no matter what, stick with the task God has given you. Go ahead. Build up those things in your life that God has called you to do. Don't let the critics or the rubble or the discouragement or anything else get in your way. Seek God, draw your strength from him, and you can accomplish what he's called you to do. Now you think about that.